guys. This is 3 p.m. We're your hosts, Jake and Shane. Today we are going to do a recap and review of Ahsoka Season 1, Chapter 1, titled Master and Apprentice. So Shane's going to give us a little rundown of where we're at in the universe. And then we will kind of give our thoughts of because we've already obviously seen the show's been out for a couple weeks now, at least from the final episode.
I think last week was the final episode.
Last week was the final episode. It's the 15th when we're recording this, so we'll kind of give a brief like what our thoughts are, and then probably when we're done recording all 8 episodes, we'll kind of give our own little rating review, kind of where we feel it fits within the universe of everything that's kind of already been laid out. So Shane, why don't you go ahead and give us kind of a rundown where we're at?
All right, so this show takes place right at the cusp of when the New Republic is actually becoming powerful. So they're kind of in the same position where the Empire was when they first took over. When like, all right, yeah, we won, guys. The bad guys, or I guess in their opinion, the enemies are all defeated, so we don't have to worry about them anymore. That's where we're at. So we still have probably a couple of years before the sequel trilogy starts. Because I think I think the New Republic is around for a good chunk of time. I don't know canonically exactly how long they rule for, but it's a while. So
this is like obviously well before the First Order really takes off, and Ren and those. Yeah.
Yep. And so I think we are at a point where Luke is became a little bit older and more wizened. He's very much a Jedi Master at this point in the timeline, and not just somebody that's trying to like figure out like, okay, cool, I'm a Jedi and I've got these powers, and like, oh, I beat the Emperor and my dad, but what else am I gonna do? He's kind of past all that, and he's at this point trying to rebuild his version of the Jedi Order.
Fingers crossed we get some kind of series about that, but we'll see.
I'm sure we will, especially with what they've done with Grogu, and stuff we'll discuss moving forward in this series. I definitely think that at some point in time, Luke and Ahsoka are gonna like sort of quasi team up to help mold a new path.
That would be awesome. I hope so. But if I'm not mistaken, this Ahsoka takes place after the first 2 seasons of The Mandalorian and before the 3rd season. I could be mistaken on that, but I think that's how it lands.
Yes. So I don't. I think this takes place in The Mandalorian. There's like a couple episodes where you see Ahsoka chilling with Luke and where he wants to start his new school. This, I believe, takes place after that. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it takes place after that. Not long after it, because she's spent a good deal of time hunting down that Night Sister and Thrawn, essentially. There's like a lot of work that's been done leading up to that. If you saw The Mandalorian, that Beskar spear that he got from the Night Sister that plays a pivotal role in this series. And so, yeah, there's a whole lot of stuff there. Anywho, so I think we're focusing on episode 1, right? Or is there anything else that I need to touch up on?
Nope, I think that's good. I'm just going to run through kind of what happens through season 1. We'll go episode, kind of maybe not scene by scene, but like a general like description of the scene, and then we can get your thoughts. You're a little more delved into the whole Star Wars universe than I am. I'm very kind of just what you call casual, I guess.
Do we want to give our general opinion of the series before we really get deep into it?
Yeah. I'm actually really interested to hear what you said, because like I said, I'm coming from someone who's, I haven't watched every single, piece of content that Star Wars has. I've played some of the games. I've recently gone back and watched a lot of like Clone Wars and Rebels, really to prepare for watching Ahsoka. And I think it's really great. But I'm also a person who likes the newest trilogy too, and a lot of people don't like that. So I don't know. Interested to see what you think, what you feel about it.
Um, so to make this quick, I really enjoyed Ahsoka. I thought it was really well done. I thought it was well written. I have my minor gripes. There's some continuity errors that I don't agree with, and the way that they uh, portrayed certain characters, which we'll get into throughout some of these episodes, that um, if the rest of the show wasn't so good, it would have really turned me off, and I probably wouldn't have wanted to
So
watch it.
I
But
totally agree with that because I actually did make some notes about that. So obviously to keep it brief because we'll delve into it a little more as we go, and I don't have too many criticisms or gripes or whatever you want to call it, but I do feel like exactly what you said, like the way they portray certain characters does not seem to, I guess, mesh well with the characters that were portrayed in like the animated series, especially Rebels,
yeah,
Clone Wars. I nothing against the actors. I think the actors were awesome. I mean, in bringing back Hayden Christensen, obviously. I mean, I think
that
that's.
was sick.
I mean, that's the best step. When they, I think that's episode 5. I mean, that's the best episode of the series in my opinion. My wife
I
watched that like 3 times. I
think I
think that
agree
was
with you
great.
there. Yeah,
But especially like Ahsoka, I just feel like in Rebels she was more like re- rebellious, for lack of another term. Kind of just more. I don't know. Like it just felt like something was missing. Maybe in the beginning couple episodes, but then it kind of seemed to find its path. Like once you get to see episode 5 or chapter 5, I think is what they call it. It goes by chapters.
yeah.
It kind of seemed to mesh a little bit better. But yeah, I do agree. There were some things here and there, but overall, I really did love it. I thought it was probably one of my favorite Star Wars. Um, I would call it a side story. I mean, it's not obviously a
Yeah,
you know what I
basically
mean?
everything coming out right now are all side stories. I'd say
Right,
if it's not a main like trilogy cinematic series, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say it's a side story.
right,
And
right.
a lot of these side stories were initially going to be movies until the sequel trilogy flopped, and they're like, "Ooh,
Yeah.
why don't we do these
Which
in a cheaper way where we can draw up the story more and maybe
what and I
actually
think
make
that's
money?"
exactly yeah, I think that's exactly what saved Star Wars when they started
Yeah,
screwing with it with these movies, which like I said, I do like the movies. I definitely have issues with it, but I think they're done pretty well, but it wouldn't be your typical, I guess, Star Wars as if like we were doing it in the 90s. You know what I mean? It's just not the same
yeah.
feel.
I just
But
don't agree with well, this isn't really the focus of our topic, but my 2 cents is I feel like the sequel trilogy had too much background nonsense between the different writers that they had on board, and like the story's not making any sense. And I just feel like they threw they threw original characters in there for nostalgia's sake, and then
yep.
treated that character poorly, and in some cases threw him away in very unceremonious ways that didn't leave we'll call old school fans feeling good. So
Yeah.
they for lack of a better term, crapped on the guys that should have been a nostalgic supercharge, and then they couldn't get the writers on board to make a continuous story that made sense, and it all just sort of
Yeah.
snowballed from there. So,
No, I,
but
I, I definitely agree with you, but I think overall I think they're just trying to push that out of the way, bring back the old fans with creating new fans, and try to make their own thing of it. But I guess that's a discussion for another day, whether that's the right path forward for Star Wars or not.
well, I think it's real obvious here. The right path forward for Star Wars is to just get rid of Kathleen Kennedy.
I guess there's an argument for that.
Yeah, like a really good one.
All right, let's get started with chapter one. All right, chapter one is titled Master and Apprentice. We start, obviously, the very iconic beginning to the Star Wars of the scroll, kind of setting up where we're at. Um, the Empire has fallen. The New Republic has basically taken its place. Ahsoka Tano has captured one of Thrawn's allies after learning of, I guess, hearing some like rumors, whispers through, the Empire sympathizers that Thrawn is still out there somewhere. She learns of this star map from the prisoner Morgan Elsbeth, who is at the beginning of this episode being transferred to the New Republic for trial. This episode with a ship of the New Republic, who is transporting this prisoner, and they're approached by a smaller ship who identifies themselves as Jedi, right?
Yeah,
And so they board this ship. We very quickly realize that these are not Jedi. Um,
yeah.
and they basically just slaughter everyone in their path. They find Morgan Elsbeth, free her, and that's pretty much the first scene of this series. Um, now, I
It
would the
wasn't.
first thing.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say the first thing I'm gonna say the girl, the apprentice with the guy is badass. I think these two characters really might be my new two favorites
Yeah,
in Star Wars. I just think they did a fantastic job. Whether you hate them, they're the bad guy, whatever. I just think they did a really good job with them for the most part. Um, but yeah, so thoughts on the first scene here?
so when I got, because I think I was a couple days, maybe even a week late, um, getting into this new season. So I heard a lot of like negative reviews, like, oh, it started out so boring, blah 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 blah. And then I see this happen, and once the chit chat got over with and the massacre began, it almost reminded me of like that first scene in episode 4 where Vader's just going through and wrecking house, right?
Just
That's
chopping them
kind of the
down.
yeah, that's kind of the feel that I got. And he's just like, nope, you're gone, you're gone. I'm gonna send my little side chick after you. She's gonna take care of
Yeah.
a bunch of you. It's like, oh, you're about to try and shoot me point blank range. Nope, sorry, you're gone. Like he just starts mopping the floor with everybody, and it
Well,
was
and you
so
got to give
cool.
this guy credit. The actor who plays Balon, unfortunately, I'm sure you already know, he passed
Yeah,
away,
hmm
which is very unfortunate. But he just has like this presence, like just
yeah,
this power to him,
for the
and
whole season,
the
not just this
whole
scene, but for the whole
series. I mean,
season.
it's
Yeah,
yeah. He's really good, and the actress who plays, I believe we find out her name is Shin something. It's in
yeah.
here somewhere, but she's a Ukrainian actress, and she did. I mean, I've never seen her in anything else. I mean, that I know of. It's not like I watch
She
everything, but
looks familiar to me. She looks like
yeah.
that chick that played in Kick Ass, but I know they're different actresses. Or at least I think
Oh,
they are.
right.
But she reminds me
She
of
is
her.
badass.
Oh,
There's no doubt about it.
yeah.
They're like them. The duo of those two are pretty badass. Um. All right, so we'll move on from there. They obviously they free the prisoner, Lady Morgan,
hmm
um, who was captured by Ahsoka. All right, so ends that scene. Ahsoka, we come to her on this planet. I don't know what planet it is, to be honest with you, but basically there's like this temple, and she's playing Tomb Raider. She's going through these caverns. She does that cool. If anyone who's seen Rebels, she has that where she uses her lightsabers to kind of do a circle around her. She drops through it. So that's kind of like a pretty a good callback to that
hmm
series, right? Which there are several really good callbacks to that
Yeah.
series in this
hmm
in this show specifically. But so she finds this star map, right? And she's leaving this cavern, temple, whatever you want to call it, and some
Oh,
droids
you don't
show
know what
up.
that temple is?
I don't. You explain it.
That's one of those. If I'm correct in this, that is one of those world between world temples.
It is. Okay.
Ezra used a part of one of them in Rebels to go into there, and then on Thrawn's ship, Thrawn brought part of that one of those temples onto his Star Destroyer Chimera, and Ezra was able to use that to. That's when he like went to the world between worlds and pulled Ahsoka away from Vader, so he
Away
wouldn't
from
come to
Vader.
kill her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I do. Now that you say that, I do
yeah,
remember that now.
I don't know if that temple specifically has the ability to open a gateway to the world between worlds, but it is one of those temples. And
Okay.
those depictions on the wall, I believe, are depictions of the father and the siblings.
Okay. Which I'm sure we'll get to that here later in a
Maybe
couple
not in
episodes
this
from now.
episode. Yeah, maybe not in this
No,
episode
no, a
so
couple
much,
episodes from now.
but yeah. Actually, no,
All
we
right.
will
So the
get to that.
droids.
We will
Yeah,
get to
oh, we definitely
Ahsoka.
will. So leaving, she's confronted by a handful of droids. She cuts them down pretty easily, but in doing so, the last one left alive kind of initiates this self-destruct
Yeah,
sequence,
like
and it's kind
Predator.
of like, oh shit, yeah. So she starts running. Right, she gets her ship, who we don't meet yet, who's piloting her ship, but it's Hugh Yang, right? And so he flies low. She jumps on the ship. They kind of escape. The whole area just is blown to pieces, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we meet Hugh Yang, who is a Jedi Order droid, who's flying the ship, who is now 100% my number one favorite sidekick of any Star Wars character ever. I mean,
He is kind of
I
cool.
think
He's a
he
little
is
quirky.
the
He's neat.
most sarcastic asshole, but like funny. I
Honestly,
mean,
I
I
feel like if we could understand R2D2, he'd be the same case.
probably, yeah.
But he only
So
speaks
I,
in whistles.
you're absolutely right. I forget about that. If we could understand, we need subtitles for R2.
We really
I
do.
believe Hugh Yang is played by David Tennant. So if you're
Yeah.
familiar with him, or like Doctor Who, I think, so he's pretty funny. Um, so this is kind of what I want to talk to you about a little bit, because I think this whole season really does revolve a little bit around Ahsoka and her allegiances and what she's willing to do, what she's not willing to do, as far as light side, dark side, force. She
Mm-hmm.
does reveal that she used some kind of mind manipulation to get the info from Morgan,
Mm-hmm.
and even says, I believe, to Hugh Yang that she did not follow standard Jedi protocol.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Hu Yang is like there. He says something to the effect of, "You wouldn't be able to get that information from her following standard Jedi protocol." And she's just like, "I'm not a Jedi." So
right.
she definitely tortured that lady.
Yeah.
Whether it's using mind tricks or some other Jedi ability, um, and that's sort of like that's kind of where she's at. I know you said before you kind of had issues with her character, and I
A
think
little.
like that's her state of mind right now, right? She's clearly not a Sith, not even a Dark
Right.
Jedi, but she's still got some major beefs with how the Jedi Order was ran, which I feel like every surviving Jedi of Order 66, once they
Yeah.
realized what was really going on, they've all got beefs with the Jedi Order because it was very like controlling and single-minded and just blind to the way that the universe actually works, the way that people
Yeah.
really work. Like the Jedi Order
Well, and
was,
once we get to episode 5, we'll really explore kind of how Anakin saw that too, and like
yeah.
why he, you know, how he was taught to be peacekeeper, and how you have to be a soldier, things like
Mhm.
that. So we'll definitely dive into that a little bit more.
So
Uh, so
yeah.
they do. You go ahead.
Oh yeah. So I was just gonna say like, I think that opinion that you had of Ahsoka, how she's like not quite as like quippy and quirky and all that. It's like she's been through some dark stuff, right? And she has not reconciled any
That's
of
very
that.
true. Yeah,
And on top of that,
that's
she
true.
lost a Padawan. Um, not to
Well,
death or
and her
anything,
master
but
on top of that.
yeah, but like her Padawan just basically said, get bent. I don't want to deal with you anymore, and left her. So she not
Right.
only did she lose her master, she had to fight and try to kill her master. And then after
Yeah.
all of that, after all of her friends in the Jedi Order were slaughtered, after all the clone troopers turned on her, that were her friends, turned on her, and then the few that didn't turn on her, a lot of them ended up dead too. Like,
Right.
she's been through some heavy stuff, and she hasn't reconciled any of it. She's just taken every day, one day at a time, one foot in front of the other, and she's like,
Just kind of
you
going
know,
through the motions.
she's also gotten older and wiser on top of all of that. So, like, she just like her character has room to grow. I think is what they were trying to do with her. Is like they didn't want to just give us the fun loving quirky Ahsoka Tano. They wanted to give us a bit of a grittier one that still holds true to like her inner spirit, and I think they did that.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree with that. All right, so they're on board. They're going to head to Home One, I believe is what they call it. The
Yeah.
ship where we finally meet Harris and Dua, which is great. Obviously, if you watch Rebels, you know who she is. She's general of the rebellion. They discuss the two new. Uh, so I wrote when I was writing this, I wrote down the two new Sith, right? That helped the escape of Morgan and the Star Map, right?
Mm.
Um, do you think that they are? Would you call them Sith?
Oh, they're 100% not Sith. They are Dark Jedi.
Okay,
And a
that's
lot of
what they're like
people,
mercenaries, right?
well, um, in
To a certain extent.
episode one, it's they're definitely acting as mercenaries. But Balin Skull's got way bigger plans than that. He is just playing a role, and his
Oh
apprentice
yeah,
is just trying to figure stuff out because she is just this tiny little cute ball of anger, you know. And she doesn't know where
right,
to project that. And so she clings to him
right.
because he's like an anchor for her. But Balin Skull is not a Sith. He, much like Ahsoka,
Okay,
he survived Order 66. Um, wholeheartedly disagrees with the Jedi Order, the original Jedi Order, and like the way they did
right.
business. And he is trying to find a better way. Now, his methods of going about that is obviously really not good because he's willing to just murder anyone that steps in front of him. But his
Yeah,
intentions are good. He's one of those uh, the end justifies the means type,
yeah. The
and
greater good, right?
and his means are brutal.
Yeah,
So they're definitely not Sith. They don't follow the Sith. They don't follow the rule of two, which not every Sith does, but that's one of their big tenets is the rule of two. So he doesn't follow the rule of two. He doesn't like uh, worship any of like the Sith deities or fallen lords or anything like that. Like he's not necessarily going out of his way to like study Sith teachings. You don't see him out there using Sith alchemy or like force lightning the crap out of people. So he might be using emotions to empower himself, which Sith do, but he's not really using a whole lot of dark side powers. He's holding true to using the light side of the force. He's just using it in a very sort of corrupt way.
well, and but he doesn't really seem that emotionally charged either, though. I mean, he seems like he has a mission,
Yeah,
and
he's not
that's what
emotional.
he's
Yeah,
doing. Period. Yeah. So, so
he's doing what he thinks is right, which is what
right,
all
right.
Jedi do. He's honestly, if we want my real opinion on this, I think if we're gonna put him on like a scale, he's much closer to being a Jedi than he is a Sith. Um,
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
just the way that he carries himself, like he's
Depending on what
very
Jedi you're, you know,
well.
uh,
I'm talking about like
comparing him to, right?
I'm talking about order wise, right? Like the
Right.
the Jedi themselves are all as individuals very different in the way that they utilize the Force, and some of them sort of stray a lot closer to the dark side than others. Luke
Mm-hmm.
and Mace Windu being two, not Luke, Anakin and Mace Windu being two people that definitely dip into the dark side of the Force. to like fuel their powers. Um,
Right.
and even
Well, we
like
see how that worked out.
yeah, even if you were to read some of the non-canon books about Luke, even he definitely sort of dipped a little bit into the dark side during some of his younger years, trying to figure out how he was going to defeat Vader. Right. So, like, there's a
Right.
lot of like, even when you want to think of Jedi as these purists, none of them really were ever. They just
Well,
claim to
I
be.
think that's the point, though. I don't know how you could be. I mean,
Yeah.
nothing's black and white. Like the, you know what I mean? So,
Hmm.
all right. So Ahsoka tells Hera that Morgan is searching for Thrawn, right? With the possibility of Ezra still being alive is thrown
Yeah.
in there, right?
Hmm.
Um, the map is still locked. I think Hera asks her to read the map, open the map, and she obviously, I think it's actually a Hu Yang that reveals, well, it's locked.
Yeah.
And Hera suggests, well, you know who can help you with that,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Obviously referring to Sabine.
Yep.
Um, so that's where that ends. So cut to a dedication ceremony to the rebellion leaders, right, on this planet. What do you know the name of the planet?
Oh,
Because I
yeah.
don't.
It's Locath, or yeah, Locath.
Oh, yeah. Now that you say that, I did have that written down here somewhere, but
Yeah,
whatever.
it's
So we're on this.
it's Ezra Bridger's home planet. That's where a
Right.
lot of the bars, battles, and rebels takes place,
Right.
and where a lot of the characters in Rebels either are from or make a home.
Right. So the dedication ceremony is going on. It's the governor who's presenting it. It's a Governor Azadi,
Mm.
and you see the monument behind him, which is awesome
The
because
exact monument
it.
from the show.
Yeah, and it has the actual like animated characters on the monument,
Hmm. Yeah, it was
which
really
is
cool.
really cool. I love that. Seeing that, I was like, oh, you ever seen that meme with was it who is it, Matt Damon or whatever? He's looking at the TV and
Hmm.
he's pointing like, oh, there it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Yeah, that one. That was me on the couch. You know what I
yeah.
mean?
Did you
So,
know that the general that's presiding over the ceremony, or the governor that's presiding over the ceremony, he's the voice actor for the general of Locath in Rebels. It's the same dude.
oh, you're kidding? No, I didn't know that. That's
Yeah.
cool. I love how they do stuff like that when they kind of incorporate the two. That's really cool.
Um,
So we
also,
then cut to.
to go back to Balin Skull, I don't remember who exactly he voice acted, but he voice acted a couple characters in Rebels and in Clone Wars. So he's
Oh,
not
no kidding.
he's
Yeah, I
not
didn't know
new to
that.
the Star Wars franchise. Like he's been in this for a while.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that's a shame what happened, man. He would have been a cool character to have stick around, or
Yeah,
whatever.
they were forced to cut his story short. Kind of. I don't know. It, they might continue his story. I don't. They may have filmed some of season two, or maybe they're going to use some CGI or a
Well, there's
lookalike
been
or
some.
something.
I've seen some things like on going around on Facebook, things like that. That
Yeah,
hey,
because
they're going to use
they
this
didn't.
person, or whatever.
Yeah, they didn't kill his character off.
Yeah,
Sorry if that's a spoiler for anybody, but we're kind of way past it anyway. So,
yeah,
but yeah,
we're a little past the date.
they didn't kill his character off, so his story's not technically over.
Right.
But
Well, I don't
anyway,
think it should be. But so we cut to Sabine Wren, who's on the hover bike, being pursued by the, let's just call it like their police, right?
yeah, they were.
Telling her to kind of turn around,
Yeah,
go back, and she pretty easily evades them. A pretty cool sequence.
yeah,
Um,
it's pretty sick.
so you finally, yeah, pretty rebellious. She wants nothing to do with this,
Mhm.
ceremony. You can obviously see a little bit of, what do you want to call it? Still, I don't want to say shame, but like, it's a sore subject for her, right?
Well,
Still with Ezra being gone, and
this takes place roughly 10 years after the end of Rebels.
yeah,
So she's still very much hurting from that.
yeah,
But that does pull me into there. I have a couple of issues with Sabine's character, and this scene here when she finally gets home is where my first little irritation sort of popped up. Where she looks at that recording of Ezra, who
yeah,
great introduction for his character, as far as the way
Right.
they did his costume and all of that, and made him look a lot like his character from the anime or animated series.
Yeah.
Sorry. And he's like, "Oh yeah, like I see you as a sister. Like, oh yeah, I love you more than everyone else because like you're my sister." It's like, that is not at all how any of that was portrayed. I didn't like that change at
See,
all.
I didn't see that either. I was confused when I saw that. And
Yeah.
granted, like I didn't like watch Rebels over and over again, so like maybe I could have missed some kind of nuances there. But like I did not see that.
So there were some
But
scenes, sort of midway through Rebels, where Ezra doesn't like fully profess his feelings to her, but he's also not really hiding it. And she shoots him down. She's like, "You're like a brother to me. Like, case, like that's it. Like, yeah, I really care about you. You're an awesome dude. You're a good friend. Also, have fun in the friend zone. Like, see you later." And her feelings for him, although it's never like fully put out there, they change throughout that series, and towards the end they have more of a mutual connection. But at that point, Ezra has gotten deeper into his Jedi training and is more focused on that and on the rebellion and on all this other stuff. And it's not that he doesn't still feel the same way about it, but he's just got other more important stuff to worry about. So the fact that he sent her like this secret voice hologram recording where he's like, "Oh yeah, like, you're my sister," I was like, "No, that doesn't actually make sense because like you've been chasing her for like what Rebels was like 4 seasons, and it spans a couple of years. Like you've been chasing her this whole time, and now at the very end, you secretly make a recording where you see her as a sister." I was like, that doesn't like I wasn't. It irritated me. It wasn't enough to turn me off, but it definitely was enough to uh, make me sort of not super comfortable with that scene.
yeah, it definitely seemed like something that was added just to try to tie it all together for this series. You
Yeah,
know what I
well,
mean?
yeah, they're trying to push a narrative, and I think they're trying to stay away from uh, like love interests. That's one thing that I've noticed in
Yeah.
a lot of these stories is they try to stay away from like couples. And like I can see why they would do it because like then you gotta start focusing on like the relationships, and that's not what Star Wars is necessarily really about. Although like other
Right.
movies have done just fine incorporating significant relationships, but still focusing on like the show. So I don't know.
Right.
I feel like they could have done that better.
Oh, I feel you. Um, so Sabine's at home, and the so ugly it's cute cat thing
It's called a
is
low.
there.
It's called a low cat.
Yeah, that thing is. I don't know
Super
why,
awesome.
but it just bothers me. I don't like. It's so ugly. I can't.
We, do you know why she is raising a low cat?
No, I don't.
Ezra really liked him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
There was like a crap ton of them that like lived where he grew up on Locath, and he really liked Locats. And then I think at a certain point they helped him find something. I think they help him find like those wolves that show him like how to get into the world between worlds. So the Locats actually play a very significant but yet subtle role in both Rebels, and that's probably why she's raising one is because it helps her remember Ezra more. So they're pretty
All
significant
right.
actually.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Get learned, nerd.
All right, so that's the end of that scene. We cut back to the destroyed temple where we found Ahsoka in the beginning of the episode. We find out, obviously, there was a temple of the Night Sisters of Dathomir.
Mm-hmm.
Lady Morgan
Mm-hmm.
and Balon and Shin, and then Merrick, I think that's how you pronounce it, Merrick, something like that.
Yep, Merrick.
That's the guy with the mask, right?
Yep.
They're all there. Uh, you find out, obviously, Lady Morgan is her ancestors are the Night Sisters, right? That
Eh,
they're all from. Dathomir. She says something along the lines of her ancestors or
So
whatever.
now we're rolling into another issue that I had. So the Night Sisters are aliens, and they use
Okay,
they use like this magic that they're really the only
right.
people that know how to use it. And
Which we definitely see later in the series.
yeah, and she has her little ceremony with the three sisters later on, which we'll get to once we get to that episode. So they kind of redeemed her towards the end as far as being a Night Sister, but like the Night Sisters are aliens. They're not humans. And
Right.
and whatever her name is, I already forgot. Uh
Morgan,
Morgan, yeah. She is
Elsbeth.
she is a human. So I did do a little bit of digging on her, and so supposedly she was a human that followed like the Night Sister teachings. So she's kind of like a Night Sister uninitiate.
She's a groupie.
Yeah, essentially, yeah. And so um, the only reason she's even alive is because back in Clone Wars, where Mother Talza double crosses, um, man, why are names being so uh, not coming to me right now? Count Dooku, there we go. So Mother Talza counters or double crosses Count Dooku, and Count Dooku like sends all of his droids in and just wipes all of them. He even finds like their secret bunker where they're like making more Night Sister zombies, and he wipes them out too. Basically kills all of the Night Sisters except for that one that was a Sith, like his secret Sith apprentice. But he tried to kill her too. She just escaped. So the
Oh,
only
that's right. And
yeah,
that she is that the bald one with like the
yeah,
tattoos on the face?
yeah.
Okay, I know who you're talking about now.
She's really cool. She actually has a really dope story after Clone Wars, or I guess kind of during Clone Wars, but like
Yeah.
on the side. Uh, so the only reason Morgan's even alive is because she's not actually a Dathomirian. She's not like of their
Okay.
species. She just sort of believes in their teachings, I guess. But they like, I don't know. They just try to push that she's Dathomiri on the audience. And it's like, well, she's not. She's a human. She's just a regular human
Okay.
who knows a
That gives some
little bit of
context then.
yeah. Who knows? She knows a little bit of witch magic, but like that's about it. She can't really do anything, which is why she needs to find, like, why she needs to go find those other sisters because she literally can't do anything.
Yeah.
She just knows stuff.
Okay. Well, on that on that planet, the apprentice Shin is sent to find Sabine Wren.
Yup.
Right. So back on the fall, Ahsoka arrives, meets with Sabine after I think she was talking to the governor or somebody, and obviously it's a little tense.
Yeah.
And she finds out that she's going after Thrawn and Ezra, hopefully, right?
Mm-hmm.
She needs help with the star map. Sabine, being techie or
Yeah.
whatever her expertise is, that she can help. Wants her help with the star
She's
map.
a techie. She's a techie girl. She's real good
Yeah,
with like all of her little computers and stuff.
and you can definitely cut the tension with a knife between the two.
Yeah.
I think they play that pretty well.
Well,
Um,
and I'm on the fence with her being Ahsoka's apprentice. Um,
Though she probably shouldn't have been, right?
well,
As we hear Hugh Yang over and over basically
yeah.
tell her how terrible she is.
So I mean, it's kind of cool because they sort of open up the Star Wars sort of mythos that like uh with enough effort and focus, sort of anyone can become a Force user, right? Which before it was like unless like you are super, so sensitive to the Force, which other Jedi will sense and then find you as a child. Or if we're gonna go prequel explanation, unless your midichlorian count is high enough, like you literally can't wield the Force, like it's not possible. But then now
Yeah.
Disney's like, actually, it is possible. You just got to try a lot harder, which I guess is kind of cool. But at the same time,
See,
it's like,
I just don't agree with that kind of that path, right? Because it was always about the medical. That was why Anakin was so, he is the chosen one, right? That's why what was Obi-Wan's master?
Qui-Gon.
Qui-Gon. Yeah, I want to call him Liam Neeson.
Well, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I
Same
mean
house
either
call.
or, right? Yeah, that's why he was so like, oh my god, like they found the kid. You know what I mean?
I,
So
I
I do take issue with that a little bit. But with that being said, though, later, and we'll get to this later, but at one point, Ahsoka directly kind of addresses this where I can't remember. I will get to it at some point. We'll go over to get, I'm sure, but
mhm.
she's asked, the Sabine's not going to be a Jedi, or she doesn't have the Force weight, and she says that she doesn't need her to be a Jedi. She just needs her to be herself, right? So whether she's training her to be an apprentice or not, or to be a Jedi, or just to be her apprentice sidekick and
Yeah.
use her Mandalorian skills or whatever, I guess that point kind of doesn't really matter.
Well, so I have a different take on that scene, right? When she's like, "Oh, I don't need you to be a Jedi, I just need you to be you," like you said. Um,
Right, right,
she's not saying, "I don't need you to wield the Force." She definitely does want
right,
her to wield the Force. She's just saying, like, you don't need to follow like these strict Jedi teachings because these
well, and
strict
you don't
Jedi.
need to be the best Jedi
Yeah,
either,
yeah, yeah. These strict. Yeah, I don't need you to be the next Anakin Skywalker. I just need you to put some effort into this, learn a few things, so you can be useful, like to myself and yourself. So she's not saying, "Hey, like, drop the Jedi shtick and pick up your Mandalorian blasters and start shooting everybody." She wants her to wield the Force. She wants
right,
her to be proficient with the lightsaber. And in other episodes, you see her going through like her training, like for different fighting forms and stuff like that. She does
right.
want her to be a Force user. She just doesn't need her to be like this strict, like sensei monk who foregoes all attachments and doesn't care about anything, but also cares about everything at the same time. Like,
Well, Ahsoka's not Jedi, right? So how could you
correct,
be
yeah,
training her to be a Jedi
yeah,
when you're not?
yeah.
So yeah,
So yeah, I definitely think that like Ahsoka's not giving her a pass on her training or anything. She just needs
right.
her. She's trying to motivate her to walk the Jedi path, but in her own way.
Right.
She wants to give her the leeway to figure it out herself, but she still needs to figure it out.
So at the end of that scene, you obviously sense the tension between them. Ahsoka gets called away, I think, by Hugh Yang. I
Yeah,
could be wrong on that, but obviously she leaves the room and Sabine
yeah,
takes off with the star map,
mm-hmm,
right?
mm-hmm.
Like I think we all kind of predicted as we're watching this that was going to happen.
That
Probably
that's also
takes
where
off with
that's also where we find out that Balin Skull was a Jedi Knight. So
right,
he is probably a couple of years older than Anakin's, because Anakin is like the youngest to have ever rose through the ranks as fast as he did
right,
because he's so
right,
powerful
right.
and skilled or whatever.
Yep.
So Balin Skull is roughly, Vader's age, a little bit older, give or take some years. So, um, but he's as a knight, not as a master, as a knight. He somehow figured out a way to survive Order 66. They don't really explain
Yeah.
that. It'd be really cool
That'd be really cool to
if in
explore.
season 2 they explain like how he was able to get away.
Yeah.
But I have a feeling that he was maybe probably already a little bit disillusioned with the Jedi before Order 66 happened. And so he may not have really even been around enough to even be a target. So that may have been
Yeah.
how he escaped.
Well, you even hear him. It may be the next episode. I can't remember, but you even hear him basically say that he knew Anakin. When him and Ahsoka finally
Yeah.
confront each other, like he knew
Well,
Anakin, but
he knew of Anakin.
Well, they don't really explore that, right? It doesn't go. He basically says something along the lines of, "Okay, well, everyone knew Anakin, right? He was
Yeah.
the
Yep.
youngest, whatever." But that does not mean that he did not know him either. You know what I mean? He just says that as like a blanket statement.
Yeah.
I mean, there could be a better story there, with the
I don't.
Anakin and him. I don't know,
I,
but
I don't.
that would be something cool to explore.
In that specific vein, I don't know if he um really knew Anakin like that. Like I
Right.
don't think they were bros. There's nothing in the Clone Wars that would allude to that.
Yeah, they're
Yeah,
probably not.
they weren't. After a long day of Jediing, they weren't kicking back, chugging blue milk together. But he just knew of him. Like Anakin was famous, like the
Yeah.
most famous Jedi. Not only was he super powerful and running through the ranks super quickly, but he was also, Palpatine's best bud. He
Right.
had deep ties to the Senate, not only through Palpatine but through Padme and various other connections. He was one of, if not the most successful general in the Clone War. Like everyone knew Anakin, so for him to say, "Oh yeah, I totally knew that guy," it's like, yeah, well, we all know Liam Neeson too, but we're not best bros.
That's very
As
true.
much as
That's a
I
good
wish we
point.
were.
Right. So that ends that scene, right? Cut to Shin, the apprentice, is there on the thaw. Droid comes back to her. She's obviously located Sabine. Um, we go to Sabine's home. She's able to figure out and open the map. Um, she's then ambushed by a handful of droids, and Shin, I think her name is Shin Hati, something like
Yep,
that.
Shin Hati. I did some research on that.
Yeah.
So Balin Skull and Shin Hati. I think it's Latin. Skull is like a Latin sort of word. The meaning of which is like the wolf that chases the sun, whereas Hati is Latin and it sort of translates to the wolf that chases the moon, which
Oh wow.
is really cool because like she is definitely closer to being a Sith, like closer to the dark side,
Yeah.
than
You can definitely tell that.
the other guy. Whereas he is just trying to make things better, just doing it the worst way imaginable. So like you can see
Yeah.
sort of how they're a little bit opposite, but at the
Yep.
same time, in Star Wars lore, specifically on Lothal and dealing with rebels, it was the Lothal wolves that showed Ezra how to get into the world between worlds. So it's really kind of crazy how many little ties and like things are intermixing. And it like
Oh yeah.
I did a little bit of research today to like make sure I was kind of ready for this on top of just rewatching episode 1. And that was one of the
Yeah.
things that I saw was like, hey, like actually this is like their names mean stuff, which is cool because that's also a throwback to like the original uh episodes 4 through 6, like Darth Vader's Latin for Dark Father and like all the other names, and
Right.
they all
Right.
have these deeper meanings for like stuff that hints to who their true character is and what their true goals are.
Right.
So it's really cool.
Yeah. Absolutely. They definitely done their research, right?
Yeah,
Especially everything they've thrown in from the animated series. I mean,
yeah,
people like my age, your age, that kind of age group who kind of grew up, when we didn't have anything else. It was, you watch the original trilogy or the Clone War or the animated series.
yeah,
That you know I'm sure they're bringing back a lot of, I wouldn't say older. I mean, well, we're in our 30s, but that kind of generation bringing back to this and have something to like, oh shit, you see that or
hmm,
whatever kind of callbacks. I love that. I love when not just Star Wars, when anything does that.
yeah. And I think they're getting better at doing subtle callbacks. It was another problem
Yeah,
with the sequel trilogy, is they would do these big, giant, blatant, in your face glaring
that can be a
callbacks and
problem.
throwbacks that distracted from the story they were trying to tell,
Yeah,
and then they're just like, oh, like I hope you really liked this, like
yeah,
massive cookie of nostalgia that we threw at you. Also, it's not here anymore. Like,
But they
okay,
need to be good enough to stand on their own, but also have something to tie them to what got you into it in the first place, right?
yeah, yeah.
I mean, and I think that is a big problem
It,
with
it,
the with the
it's a fine line to walk, and I think that
right.
the writers at Disney are finally starting to figure that out. Because
I think so. I hope so.
even some of the movies that came back sort of after the sequel trilogy, like there was a lot of like, let's call it nostalgia clickbait going on. We're like, oh, like
Yeah, yeah,
look at
yeah.
this crazy stuff going on that you like old folks would really like, and then but we're gonna do it in a way that the new kids are gonna like it too. It's like, well,
Yeah.
I don't need you to change the old stuff. You can hint at the old stuff, so I got something to be like, oh my god, like I actually catch that reference. Like when I watch Star Wars with my kids, it's like, oh, like you didn't notice that little thing that went on, but let me explain that to you real quick because that was really cool.
Oh yeah.
You know?
Well, that's just fun for us, right?
Yeah,
Having
yeah,
your kids like grow up and be able to like, oh, well, did you know, this
uh-huh.
character actually was here, or what? You know what I mean? I love that
Yeah.
stuff.
And 9 times out of
I
10,
can't wait till Jackson's like old enough to where I can do that. You know what I mean?
well, I'm
Because
gonna
now it's just like talking to myself.
yeah, I'm gonna let you know. 9 times out of 10, Jackson's gonna look at you and be like, okay, Dad,
Yeah,
whatever,
I don't
boom.
care.
Yeah.
But
But you're still gonna get a kick out of it. They won't get
oh
it.
yeah.
We will. They'll still enjoy it. We'll enjoy it more because we like get a
Now
little.
I just torture my wife with the information, whether she wants to hear it or not. I just, did you know this?
If you know what, and this is gonna detract way away from Star Wars, but if you really want to irritate your wife, um, look up all of like this like background knowledge of Lord of the Rings, and then just watch all of the extended versions of them. And every 5 minutes, pause it and like, oh, did you know that in this scene here, this is what's going on? It's so fun. It's the greatest thing ever, and it takes
See, I yeah,
all day. Actually, a couple of days if you're not strong enough.
I was gonna say that seems like a lot to
I,
undergo.
I think the original three movies, if you watch all extended versions of all three of them, it's like 12 plus hours.
Oh boy.
And then if you do the Hobbit trilogy, it is about the same amount of time. So it's a good.
Which is, I know this has nothing to do with Ahsoka, but
Yeah.
like I really liked the Hobbit trilogies, and apparently that got a lot of like hate and a lot of criticism.
Um,
I thought they were good.
they were good. I definitely understand and agree with most of the criticism, but they were really good. They're really enjoyable. Um, maybe we can do another segment on that. But let's get back to Star
Yeah,
Wars.
yeah. Well, we're almost at the end
Yeah,
anyway, right? So there's obviously a lightsaber duel between Sabine and
it was
Shin.
sick.
They fight. Yeah, it was pretty good. Definitely the choreography was great there, and then at the end, obviously, Sabine gets ran through with a lightsaber
Hmm.
by Shin, and she takes off with the star map,
Yep.
and that's where it ends.
Yeah.
So, um, I know we've kind of beat this episode to death, but what do you? I mean, as far as starting off a new side story with Ahsoka, what did you think of the first episode when you watched it?
I thought it was really good. Overall, I feel like it's a nice addition to the lore, and it expands the story and allows us to know like a little bit of what's going on during that time. Um, so far, we've got Ahsoka. We've got wow. Why am I drawing? I'm just drawing blanks all night tonight. Um, the Mandalorian. We got Book of Boba. We've got what was the other one? There was another one. Is it just those three? Ahsoka, Boba, and
No, you
Mandalorian?
have Andor.
Yeah, and Andor. So all four of those series, they're all taking place kind of roughly around the same time ish, right? So um the dudes at Disney are really focusing on this transitionary point in Star Wars, which is cool because like with the movies, you get a very narrow-minded perspective. It's like, hey, we're gonna follow this one character, and like
Mm-hmm.
obviously everyone knows there's a million things going on around this character, but we're only like that's how movies work. You focus on the main character and what they go through, and you kind of don't get anything else. So this is neat. I like what they're doing. I like this first episode. It was a great entry. I was a little on the fence and didn't like some of the creative interpretations that they took, or however you want to call that. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think overall, and especially in the light of what we've been getting with Star Wars from Disney, I think this was really good. That's my take.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. It was definitely enough to, at least for someone who's not like deeply entrenched in the Star Wars lore and knows as much as someone like you or maybe someone else who just really is like that's what they've been entrenched in since they were a kid, or whatever. It was enough to definitely get me hooked on the first episode and like want to come back for the next episode. Because I knew some new episode of something, new series to watch or whatever. It's hard sometimes anyway, hard for me to like I watch first episode. If I'm not hooked, I just won't come back to it. But it
Yeah,
was definitely enough to get me interested and want to keep
yeah. You
watching and
wanted to
see where
see
this
what else was going
goes.
to happen. If anything, you wanted to see
Absolutely.
if the girl was going to survive the lightsaber wound, because I mean that's what did it with
Right.
Qui-Gon and a bunch of other dudes. You're like, well, crap. I at least need to see what happens to Sabine,
Right.
because like
Right. Well,
especially
so that's actually a
if
good
you're a
point.
fan of
So
Rebels.
right. Well, so far from Rebels, who we've seen is obviously Ahsoka Tano,
Mm.
Sabine Wren,
Yeah.
Hera Syndulla.
Mm-hmm.
Is that it? I mean, we've seen Ezra, but as a hologram, right?
The Astro Droid, not Clacker, Clap,
Chopper.
Chopper. There it is. Yeah, you seen Chopper.
Chop.
Chopper
Yep.
was sitting next to Syndulla when she was like first
Yeah.
introduced, but he doesn't really make any
Yep.
noise. Further on in the series, he starts like being a little bit more pivotal, which is kind of cool because
More like an R2 character,
well,
he's
a more animated R2 character, right? Like R2 is
a little bit.
R2 is kind of personified more in the Clone Wars series, but in the movies, I mean, he's still like he's still just an astro droid. He's a special astro droid, and he's one that the main antagonists in the original and sequel trilogy like have bonded with and really care about. But at the end of the day, other than being like a little bit quirky, he's an astro droid. Whereas
Right.
Chopper is like has always been super animated, like super crazy. Like he has like these thoughts and ideas that, although he talks like R2D2, he figures out how to portray. They even give him the little like he's got these little hands where he can like grab stuff and make noises and gestures and stuff. So like
He's not just running into walls and
yeah
shit. They're zapping people with
he's
his little
he's very much more personified than any other droid that we've really seen, which is cool. It made him a memorable character. He wasn't just another R2 unit, because if they would have done that, it would have been boring. We already have R2, and we already
Yeah.
like R2 was badass, but Chopper does it in a different way, and they show that like later on in the series because there's another character that'll be introduced, I think, in the next episode that Chopper is sort of bonded with and
Right.
become a
Right.
companion.
Which I have several questions about.
Oh, yeah. Do we?
So we'll get to
Yeah.
that next episode.
Mhm.
All right. Any more thoughts, or is that it for this one?
I think that's it. Like you said, this was a really great intro, or I guess like we both said, it was a good intro into the series. And it definitely made me excited to see more. I was on the edge
Yeah.
of the seat more often than not while watching it. When I heard those negative reviews before I saw it, I that may have actually helped because I went in it with low expectation.
A little less
Yeah,
expectations.
and I was
Yeah.
blown
Lower
out of the water.
expectations anyway.
Yeah, so it was,
Yeah, I could agree. I could definitely agree because like all the critics that I did see, or the criticisms from critics that I did see, was it's very slow. It starts slow, whatever,
yeah,
and
and I don't see that.
it has I don't either. There are
Points.
slow parts, but
Yeah.
that's how you build a show
Yeah.
up,
They're
right? You
world
got to start
building.
with some information, yeah, you world building, and then you really kick it off. And I don't, I watching the whole series now. I don't agree with any of the criticism about it was too slow. I thought it was like it was hit after hit after hit
Yeah.
after hit. There's a couple slow scenes, but as far as an episode goes, I don't think there was any slow episode.
No. Game of Thrones had some slow episodes where you're like, why am I
Yeah,
still
yeah.
watching this? Uh, but not here.
God, I could talk to you about Game of Thrones all day.
That's where your knowledge surpasses mine, my friend.
Yeah, yeah, I could. Yeah,
And
I could talk about
also,
that all day.
as far as our viewers are concerned, I know Jake, you keep saying that like I'm the one that's more into it than you, and you're just a casual. But I definitely still only consider myself casual. I'm a huge Star Wars fan. I've read some
Right.
books. I've seen just about every show and or movie. But I haven't done like that religious level of research that a lot of you guys out there have done. So, um, just because Jake here says that I'm like a Star Wars master, like don't look at me that way.
keep
Uh,
keep the hate to
yeah,
yourself. Don't criticize me for getting anything wrong or
I'm
names wrong
I'm
or
still
whatever.
very much a learner, right? Like I watch it all,
Yeah.
uh, and I thoroughly enjoy most of the Star Wars content that I've absorbed, but I am not an
Right.
all-knowing master of everything Star Wars. So keep that in mind.
All right. Well, I guess the only last thing I have to say is that if they keep making shows like this, I am all in as far as Star Wars go. I almost prefer the episodic, platform than um, doing which movies are great too. But I think you can tell a better story when you have a TV series. Even 8 episodes, which I was hoping for 10, but by the end of it, when you have a story to tell and you're done, you should just be done.
Yeah.
That's why I truly believe like probably
Well,
the best show of all time. Which I always bring this up when we talk about things like this. But the best show of all time, I think, as far as starting with a story and ending when you should have, is Sons of Anarchy. I think it ended
I
how it
knew
should have
you were
ended,
going to
and
bring up Sons of Anarchy. I knew it. I don't know why. We're
yeah.
like, oh, but there's this one show that I'm like, he's going to bring up Sons, isn't he? And there you go.
Well, yeah. As far as after I watched that show, I thought that's the model you should go. And even the beginning seasons of Game of Thrones, it was 10 episodes. You got the story in, and you stopped. It wasn't going on. Just I think that was the problem with a lot of the like the Clone Wars and even Rebels, is you have a ton of filler episodes that are in my opinion, absolutely unnecessary. I think you tell a story, make it good enough that it doesn't matter if it's 8 episodes, 10 episodes, or 16 episodes. You tell the story you need to tell, and don't put in a bunch of. That's what makes a good series. And I
Yeah.
feel like if they stick to this what do you want to call it? This setup that they have, this playbook that they're going off of right now, as far as Ahsoka or Andor or
Yeah.
Mandalorian, you stick to that playbook, and that's how you bring it back from being, when Disney took over and the criticism that got from the new, trilogy. That's how you keep it on the right track. Is you keep these stories where they need to be.
So,
You
and
know what I mean?
and I'm going to disagree just a little bit. I'm okay with some filler, right? And filler does work better. Filler episodes work better in an animated format. Um, but if you do your
Right.
filler episodes right, it adds to the overarching lore of the story. Um,
I feel like it can.
yeah, yeah.
Right. It
No, if
definitely
you do it
can.
right, it does. Now,
Right.
now I will agree with you that Clone Wars um had some had a lot of filler episodes that didn't really
A
add anything
lot.
to anything. There was like a whole
No.
episode of C3PO and R2 going to like a market to try to get this like rare fruit, and they go through this whole wackadoo thing where, and you probably didn't see it because I think you like skipped around to see
Probably skipped
just the
over that.
important
Yep.
stuff.
Yeah, like why do I need
but
to see
yeah,
that? I don't.
it didn't add anything. It was like that was
Yeah.
their beach episode. Which, if anyone listening is an
Mm-hmm.
anime fan, most animes have a beach episode. Even Avatar: The Last Airbender had a beach episode, and like it only very minorly adds anything to the plot and or lore of like the show. You know,
Right.
although I digress. Avatar: The Last Airbender's beach episode did add to the lore. Just throwing that out as an example, so don't hate me, Avatar fans. Huge fan of that as well. But yeah, like
But we're getting to the age where like I got so much shit going on in my life. I got work,
yep,
I got a new kid where, there's always something happening. I don't have time to be wasting watching
yeah.
a series that is
What's the
22 episodes long.
yeah? What's the point? How are we getting to it? And let's wrap the
Right.
story up.
Absolutely. That's where I think it's the HBO model, right? You keep your seasons short for the most part. They
Like
have 10,
Game of Thrones
8,
didn't do
9,
that.
10 episodes. Yeah, 8, 9, 10, 10 episodes was the max they ever
Yeah,
did.
but their episodes were like an hour and a half long or longer. Their episodes were like two or
Agreed.
what's that?
I said agreed.
Yeah,
Yeah, they were pretty
their
long.
episodes were like two or three episodes just strung like all in one, you know?
Yeah, that's true. It's like 10 movies you got to watch back to
Yeah.
back. But all right. Anyway, I great impression so far. So
Yeah.
we'll see you again on the next chapter, which is chapter 2. I'm sorry, Toil and Trouble.
Yeah.
So that's it for us at 3 p.m. I'm Jake. This is
Shane.
Shane, and we're out.